and I am Kelly Buddy. So I'd like to introduce her. She will be our speaker this morning, and she has 7 years experience with DHCD. As was already indicated, she is the planning grant guru. In addition, she is very knowledgeable and is our go-to person for our any questions regarding the environmental review process. You can go to Kelly. She has all the knowledge. And in addition, a hidden fact is she is the mayor of Possumville, which you will find out in further on in the presentation. And without further ado, also just want to let you know, if you have questions, please submit them in the chat. And we're going to try to hold all questions to the end. And if you would like to speak out, you have something you want to ask right then, please use the raise hand function at the top of your screen. And with that, again, without further ado, Kelly Cherapich.
Thank you
Kelly.
so much. Thank you for that introduction, Kathy. That's probably better than I deserve.
Oh, please stop now. Come on.
So I don't know if y'all can see my hat that I have on. When I was doing my presentation, didn't think I'd have my hair up when I figured this out, but in this line of work, y'all know we wear a lot of hats, right? So you all are used to seeing me wear an environmental review hat in these presentations, but I'm going to take off my environmental review hat and I'm going to put on my planning grant specialist hat. And Amanda had talked about in her session what our why is. So, sorry about this. I'm trying to get two screens going on at once. So planning grants, determining your why. Like I was saying about the hats. So my why is helping you all determine your why with planning grants. Like I said, we wear a lot of hats, but my favorite hat to wear, while I do love doing environmental reviews and talking to you all about that, I really deeply enjoy working within communities and figuring out what their why is. So that is what we have planning grants for, and I'm going to talk to you all about that today. And I'm going to take off this hat because I did not think it through with wearing an updo today. So that was my fault. So we talked about my why, but we talk about the what before we talk about the why. So what is a planning grant? It may sound self-explanatory, but we should never assume. So a planning grant, first of all, is never used on construction, even if there's money left on the end of the grant. I know that might seem, like I said, self-explanatory, but a planning grant is to lay the groundwork for projects in the future. So they can be used to pay for overall community needs, housing needs assessments, PERs, PARs, cost estimates, to do outreach, prioritize improvement plans and master plans, staffing and operation plans, economic restructuring plans, and grant management tasks. And these are projects that we have that they move a little quicker, and just a great resource for our localities to plan before they do the construction. And as I said, they are never used for construction. So please do not ask if they can be used for instruction or construction. All right. So we kind of get what the what is for a planning grant, but how are you eligible for a planning grant? So all of our planning grants fall under the CDBG umbrella. So that means that eligibility for a CDBG grant would be the same for a planning grant. And the first thing you have to do is to be a non-entitlement locality to be eligible for a planning grant. And all of our non-entitlement localities can be found in Appendix A in our 2023 CDBG program design. And they also must have the potential to meet one of the below national objectives. And you might be thinking, what do I mean by potential? But we will get to that later. But so you all probably know what the 3 national objectives are in your sleep. You're going to hear me say it now, in case you don't know what our 3 national objectives are from HUD. And HUD is our funding agency. So these are federal regulations we have to follow because our money comes from HUD. and they have their regulations just like we have our regulations for you. So the 3 national objectives are benefit to low and moderate income individuals, elimination of slum and blight, and urgent need. I'm not going to talk about urgent need because that is not really the national objective that we work with for planning grants because of the nature of those projects. Urgent need projects hopefully won't need a planning grant, and those projects are applications accepted on a rolling basis throughout the year. So they don't usually ever get planning grants. But the other 2 national objectives, which is benefit to low and moderate income and slum and blight, there are a lot of different ways to meet the low and moderate income benefit. You can do it by individuals, so benefits serving individuals. You can do it by low and moderate area, so a whole area has over 51% low and moderate income individuals, or you could do it by limited clientele, and those are groups of people that are presumed to be LMI status, and one of the LMC limited clientele groups that we get in are for benefits for people considered elderly by HUD, and that age is 62, something that my mother gets very mad about every time I tell her. So the next national objective is slum and blight, and that is the national objectives that you would try and capture if you have a business district revitalization planning grant or a downtown revitalization planning grant. And I'm going to mention this. I mention it everywhere when we talk about the slum and blight national objectives. If you are looking to move your business district revitalization or your downtown revitalization planning grant to apply for a construction project, all slum and blight projects must have a majority facade improvement component to meet national objective. So that is a HUD rule, and I just like to say it every time it gets brought up. All right. So remember how I said, what did I mean about planning grant project eligibility? Because you all might be thinking, hey, I need to do a planning grant to see if my project is eligible. So that's kind of not helpful for me if I have to determine its eligibility before applying for a planning grant. So let me explain what I mean by potential. And I'm going to use this example because y'all know that I could not go an entire presentation without bringing up Possumville. Y'all have come to expect it by now, and I have to deliver on my promises. So we have 2 potential planning grants here. On the right, we have Marsupial County, and they are wanting to come in for a planning grant for the Elijah Field Subdivision Infrastructure Planning Grant. And this is going to be to do a PER, so a preliminary engineering report, which from the first slide is something that we pay for, to look at infrastructure, including water, sewer, natural gas, and access roads, to support their new gated community subdivision that has proposed housing ranging from 750,000 to 2.5 million. So that's our first one. That's Marsupial County. And our next one is the town of Possumville, which is located in Marsupial County, but there's a lot of contention between the 2 localities. So town of Possumville, they see what Marsupial County is doing, and they're thinking to themselves, hey, we have not had a grant with DHCD in a while, and we need to really go back and assess our community needs, but we don't know what our community needs are. So they're going to apply for a townwide community needs assessment planning grant. And their proposed activities are to do preliminary housing, windshield surveys for potential targeted site projects, and to engage in community engagement activities to really ascertain community development and public infrastructure needs. So that's what they're doing. So I'm going to ask, who do you all think whose planning grant would be suitable for a planning grant? And y'all somebody can unmute and tell me if you want to, or maybe we can put it in the chat and Kathy Beat could read it out for us.
I'll speak up. My name's
Oh.
Stuart Burrell, and I'm with the AFO. Um, Marsupial County trying to develop $750,000 to $2.5 million houses is not serving low-income folks, and that's who the CDBG program is designed to serve primarily. Even when it also meets other needs, we have to think about helping low-income folks, and that means low to moderate income as determined by HUD for your county.
Thank you very much for speaking up, Stuart.
And Kelly, if I could, we have three, Jolena Young, Chasta White, and Randolph Logan all have said Possumville, so they agree with Stuart.
Wonderful. I'm glad everybody agrees with Possumville, and also I did put green for go and red for not go, just to kind of give you
very
all a hint,
good, clever.
to give you all a hint. But yes, Stuart is absolutely right. So while Marsupial County are looking at doing proposed activities that ostensibly we could fund with a planning grant, they are not serving low and moderate income people, nor does it ever have the potential to serve LMI individuals. And that keyword there is potential. With Possumville, there is a potential to develop an LMI project in the future. For Marsupial County, they're never going to have the ability to develop either an LMI, a project serving LMI, or a Slum and Blight project. So, and we might hear from Possumville later in the session. Who knows? Stay tuned and find out. All right. So we talked about eligibility. We talked about what a planning grant is. Y'all saw my hats. Now let's talk about what planning grant categories are. So this year we have two separate main categories of planning grants. And then underneath we have subsections in the other section of planning grant category. So our first main planning grant category is what is called the activation planning grants. And formerly they were called needs assessments, overall community assessments, community organizing grants, that kind of thing. And first of all, it makes sense to have all of those types of grants named one thing. Second of all, when we hear the word activate, that means we have to start doing something. We want to, really activate it. We want to charge it up. We want to get rolling. It's a verb. It's a doing word. So activation planning grants are for localities that are either new to DHCD and have never partnered with us, or haven't partnered with DHCD recently, and it's to activate them back into how DHCD expects grant management to be handled, and for technical assistance for working with us. And it also allows localities to collect data on current community needs and wants for potential project-driven planning grants in the future. So it's the same overall idea of our needs assessment and community assessment grants. We're just calling them activation planning grants. Yeah, to make it easier for everybody. All right, so our next planning grant category is project-driven planning grants. And I had just a heck of a time trying to find clip art for this one, so y'all can be very impressed with my homemade clip art I have in the corner. But project-driven planning grants those are probably the types of planning grants y'all are most familiar with, and those are planning grants that have already a project in mind, and they can be a continuation of a completed activation grant or an additional phase of a current project. So we have a lot of people that will do an overwide town assessment or county assessment for housing, and then come back in and do a targeted project-driven planning grant for a specific neighborhood, or they may have already gotten a CDBG construction award for the first phase of a project, and then they do a planning grant for the next phase of project. These project-driven planning grants directly align with our CDBG competitive and open submission project types, and they are business district revitalization, also called downtown revitalization projects, community service facilities, economic development, and those are job retention, creation, those kinds of things, housing rehab, targeted scattered site or comprehensive, public infrastructure, and public service. So I've talked to you about the different types of planning grants, but one of the most important things, not only in just planning grants, but the work we all do in general, is community engagement. So I have a little parable, a little story for you all about community engagement and how that can translate to a good project. And I want to apologize if you've been with DHCD for a while, been working with us, you may have heard some kind of version of this spark plug story. I have put my own twist on it. So if you can see where I'm going with this, I apologize in advance. Hopefully you all can see this. But this is a spark plug. And this, I pulled it from my trunk earlier. It's been riding around in my trunk since the last time I changed my spark plugs. And I'll probably have to do that again pretty soon. But a spark plug, the term that we use in grant management, is pretty analogous to what a spark plug is for a car. So without working spark plugs, your car won't go, right? So back when I was getting ready to start driving, my dad told me, hey, I'll buy you your first car, but you have to help me build it. So that was the deal. So for the next year and a half, I spent my Saturdays building the car. But the very first thing he had me do under the hood was learn how to change spark plugs. And the reason he did that was because car won't go without a spark plug, firstly. Secondly, it's super easy to do. Anybody can change spark plugs. If I can do it, it can't be that hard. So getting community engagement for projects is necessary and easier than you think. So if you think about that analogy, a spark plug, both in the mechanical sense and in the grant management sense, plus hard work, plus time, will equal a really cool car and or a really successful project. So speaking of community engagement, what does community engagement look like? Usually you have a spark plug, or the locality has an idea about a project. We get community input. We develop a project management team to really help develop what the project will be. And then we have a good idea and a good idea for a planning grant. But community engagement can also look like this. Maybe somebody has an idea about the project. Let's say Possumville decides, you know what we really need? We need to put in, we need to replace all the sewer lines in the town. They're 10 years old. We just really need to replace them. They solicit community engagement, and from community engagement, they find out, hey, wait a second, our sewer lines aren't that old, but we really, really desperately need a community service facility in the old school because we don't have any childcare. And they get information from the community, and then they decide to pull a Ross Geller and they pivot to get a new idea, and then to get a better project with spark plugs that align with the feedback they have gotten from the community. So even though a locality or a project management team might have an idea about some projects, they might find out the community needs and wants are different. So I promised y'all we're coming back to Possumville. We talked about their planning grant they applied for earlier. Congratulations, they were approved for a planning grant. Unfortunately, they're having issues getting engagement from the community members. They're like, we keep having these council meetings. We keep trying to do our community engagement sessions, and we're tacking them onto our council meetings, and we're doing them every 2 weeks or every month at Wednesday at 5 p.m. And we cannot figure out why we can't get people to be engaged. So what are some things Possumville can do to get community engagement? First of all, if you want true community engagement, tacking on engagement, you can tack on some community engagement meetings for town council, but a lot of people don't want to show up to town council meetings. They say that's not really, my voice either won't be heard or I'm not comfortable doing that. So let's try and move away from that idea and think about what Possumville can do. Other places Possumville can get community engagement. First of all, one of the best ones I have seen are, we had a locality. They have a big football game every year. The whole town comes because it's their rival. They have a rivalry. Words are hard this morning. Everybody from the town goes. So they set up a table with surveys to gauge community needs and interest on projects, and they got just a ton of responses. So that's something Possumville could do for engagement. They could do a football game or a basketball game, whatever the people are going to go to. If your community has like a big fall festival, or in my case, I'm from Marion, we have a street dance every year. We have a big arts and crafts festival. You know, setting up a table at one of those events will get people are already going to be there. They're not having to go to an extra step to attend a community engagement meeting. So go ahead and meet people where they are. And that includes utilizing Facebook and Zoom. Some people can't get out. They either work at weird times, or not even weird times they won't be able to attend the meetings, or maybe they can't get out. Maybe they are older and they can't get out of their house, or maybe they don't live in the locality they grew up in, but they still have family there. They have ideas and things that they want to see improved. And utilizing things like Zoom and Facebook allows those people to have a voice. Recently had a facilitated planning session, and we had 2 or 3 people from out of state, one from Texas, one from like North Carolina. And this was for a really small community, but they had moved away and they wanted to talk about some things they could see for engagement, community engagement. So things like that are really good for community engagement. Go into the local schools, especially if you're looking at projects that would either benefit school age people, or that kind of thing. So for downtown projects and business district revitalizations, it's really good to get input from your high school students. Go to a civics class, go to a government class, see if you can speak with them. As community service facility projects that might be targeting those groups, go to the schools and get community engagement. There's always, the tried and true sending surveys out with the water bill kind of thing. And, regular community meetings are fun, but maybe think about meeting people where they are. So if you always have them at the same time, for example, think about a housing rehab project. If you are driving along and notice most people are working during the day, don't have your community meetings at noon, because no one's going to be able to show up, right? Find out where the people are and try to get to them that way. Not only that, but if it were me, I would want to make sure my voice is heard and my opinions are considered. So that's what a planning grant is meant to do, is we want to get information from the community members and allow their voices to be heard. Because that's what we're supposed to do with not only planning grants, but for really everything. All right. So we talked about what my why was for the work that I do. So my why is to help determine y'all's why. So what's DHCD's overall why for planning grants? So I talked about HUD earlier. HUD gives us money so that we can use it in the state for CDBG money. So that means HUD also monitors DHCD's timely expenditure of funds. So they want us to be like 16-year-old Kelly and spend our money really fast. But they also want us to be like 33-year-old Kelly and spend our money wisely, or more wisely than I was at 16. So planning grants help us develop projects that will move faster when they get to construction, or will also let us see during the planning grant process that maybe a project's not ready to apply for a construction project, or a project might not be the right fit for CDBG funds. And that's fine, because that allows us to keep HUD happy, essentially. And that goes along with our next point, to expedite project completion. So if you have a planning grant and you have already done all of your preliminary engineering, you've gotten drafts of all your agreement, you've done all your pre-contract stuff during the planning grant, all the stuff that you can do before executing a contract with DHCD, that means you're ready to rock and roll as soon as you're awarded a project. So you're ready to just go, and quick projects means DHCD's happy, means HUD's happy, means the beneficiaries are happy because the project gets complete quicker. Also means that there is more money available for construction activity. So if you apply for a planning grant and you do preliminary engineering in your planning grant, that means that you don't have to do as much engineering in your implementation grant, and you have more money to spend, and everybody likes more money. All right, continuing on. What are some other whys for DHCD planning grants? So for business district revitalization, downtown revitalization projects, we require you to do a planning grant before applying for a community improvement grant. And that is because those types of projects have so many moving parts, and they take a long time to complete. So if you have a planning grant beforehand, you can start, you'll get your consultant to do the work to determine your blight, to determine your engineering, to get your facade and participation agreements. And those are all things that you don't want to be doing during the pre-contract period. You want to be doing those during a planning grant. So we require you to do one before applying for community improvement grant. And it's a great use of time, because that really gives time to develop a comprehensive and holistic project. Now, we strongly encourage, we don't require this, but we strongly encourage grantees to also complete a planning grant if applying for a community service facility construction project, for the same reasons as BDR and downtown revitalization projects, mainly because there's so many moving parts. You have to get benefit tracking, you have to do provider agreements, staffing and operation plans, pro formas, so on and so forth. So it is very smart to get a planning grant for that type of project type as well. And even if you have a straightforward project, like a water line replacement project, you're like, well, I don't need a planning grant for that. But depending on the timing, you could use a planning grant to go ahead and start getting your information together before applying for your construction project. So your engineering, your user agreements, and your draft documentation. So, we very, very either require, strongly encourage them for projects with moving parts, or think about it for your straightforward projects as well, if you need that for your timing. All right. So what is DHCD's last law for planning grants? So planning grants allow DHCD to show our investment in all the communities of Virginia. And I hope that this really, really great graphic design shows that. But DHCD wants to show we are invested in communities, even if it is communities that haven't worked with us before or haven't worked with us in a long time. A planning grant is a great way to show our investment and to build those relationships with communities that maybe we've not had for a while, or to strengthen those relationships we've had with communities that we have been working for a while. And also it allows us to, going off of that relationship building aspect, it allows us to, even if a project might not be for CDBG, we can direct them to other places in DHCD or other grant funding we might know of. But we can keep that pipeline going, that conversation going with that community about how DHCD can help invest. And that's our whole purview. We talked about this before. DHCD wants to help build prosperous communities. So planning grants help show that. And like I said, DHCD offers so many grants in just our office alone. So here are some other planning opportunities you can get from DHCD. We've got ARC, and all these are housed in our overall DHCD. ARC supports planning activities in the ARC region, and you can contact Bill Hartley in our Abington office. We've also got Go Virginia, which can do planning projects, and you would contact Sarah Dunnigan in our Economic and Community Vitality office. Virginia Main Street does planning for Virginia Main Street communities. Courtney Maley is the program manager for Virginia Main Street. And we also have it's a new program, Virginia Broadband and Adoption Planning Grant Program. And you can contact using that digital opportunity at dhcdvirginia.gov. All right, so we talked about, all the things that that DHCD gets from a planning grant, but why should a locality do a planning grant? You all might be thinking it sounds like more work for you all. Why do we need a planning grant? First of all, money, the big thing. We are giving you money, which means that you all will be saving money because we will be paying for most of the pre-contract documents y'all need in the future. So you're saving money. We have a rolling application cycle. About 6 months out of the year, we accept planning grants. So depending on, other funding that the locality may be looking for, a planning grant can really be braided in those 6 months to help out with that. Planning grants means you get technical assistance all the time. So you can be asking questions in the planning grant for future phases of the project, for other funding, so on and so forth. And that technical assistance leads to figuring out how we can braid other grant money into potential projects, or figuring out if a project might not be right for CDBG, but we can find other grant money that a project is right for. Most importantly, you would have the coolest and only planning grant specialist in the agency as your program administrator, which is me. And I'm not this nervous all the time when I talk to localities. So, consider that as well. So I talked about the other braiding that we can do, and these are just a smattering of funding partners that we've worked with for either planning grants or construction projects. Already mentioned ARC for planning. They obviously do construction as well in our ARC region. We've got Virginia Housing, we've got USDA, and their community service facilities program is pretty robust. So if that's a project type y'all are looking at, I think just looking at that. The Southeast Crescent Regional Commission, Virginia's Department of Historic Resources, Kaboom, and other nonprofit or private foundations for playground equipment or just private foundations in general. Virginia Department of Health drinking water, VDOT, Virginia Energy, which they do planning grants as well, DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, they also do planning grants, and then Tobacco Commission, which once again also does planning grants, and they all do construction projects. All right, so if y'all have any questions, I'm going to try and figure out how I can actually start looking at the chat. So if you have any questions, we can either post them in the chat or y'all can unmute and ask questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Right now, there's no questions. Okay, Carrie?
Okay.
Kelly. Okay.
All right. Well, if no one has any questions.
I've got a question for you, Kelly. This is Stuart. What if you have a planning grant and it doesn't seem to yield into a project? What effect would that have on a community's future ability to work with DHCD or CDBG?
I'm very glad you asked that question, Stuart. So it's helpful for DHCD to spend money on the front end to find a project won't be viable, rather than have to find that out during construction.
Oh, that's
so
good.
We
Good
would
point.
see that as very responsible for a community to have a planning grant and say, you know what, we're either not ready to apply or this project might not align with CDBG. So a community would not be penalized for that. And, I actually encourage thinking about, once you do a planning grant, are you really ready for implementation or construction? Thank you for asking.
And
that,
Kelly,
Stuart.
we have a question in the chat from Jolena Young. And
Sure.
she asked, did you say that downtown revitalization where it requires facade improvements?
Downtown, yes. So you can do a downtown or business district revitalization planning grant and look at all the kinds of things that your project area would need. Streetscapes, lighting, wayfinding, signage, facades, etc. If you don't have a facade component in your planning grant, a construction project we would not be able to fund that, because underneath the HUD national objective, facades are what they consider to be slim and blight. But you can still do a planning grant. You just can't do a construction grant if you don't have a facade component.
And she has a follow-on. She says, I've heard it is difficult to get business participation because of the requirements.
Maybe previously, I think it was a little harder to get business participation because we had a requirement that the business owner had to put so much up for facades, $15,000. We don't have that requirement anymore. So I have noticed we're having more and more business participation. But what I would say to that is during your downtown or BDR planning grant, really looking to see if you can get business participation to see if A, it's a viable project for construction, and B, building those relationships with those local business owners to maybe get participation in the future.
And we have a request from Emily. Can you put that last slide with your contact info back up?
Let me see if I can do that, because this has been.
Or maybe we can do that at the end, or I could paste your,
Can you see it now? Awesome.
let's see. No, I can't, but.
Sherry
Yeah.
nodded her head. Okay. As long as y'all can see it, that's good.
Oh, I don't, but it's okay.
All right. I think that's, and also wanted to plug this at the end. We will be having a how to apply workshop very soon where I will be talking about the actual application for planning grants. So stay tuned for that information, that e-blast, and you can get more information on this year's planning grant requirements and how to apply for them.
And also Amanda has a comment. BDRs should involve chambers of commerce, Main Street groups, and merchant association.
Absolutely. And if you have a BDR or a downtown planning grant with us, I am going to put you in contact with the Virginia Main Street out of our ECDV office so that you can really begin to do that process as well. That is a requirement
And
of our standards.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry. Joanne has a question. Joanne Pearman.
Okay, good morning. It's more of a statement and just something to piggyback on. Murals are becoming a big thing now, and murals are part of facades too. And you can make plans for doing murals on certain buildings if the building owners support that. So think about that when you're thinking about revitalizing your downtown areas. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Joanne. That's putting a mural on a building is also improving the facade, AKA eliminating slum and blight. So think about it that way. All right. I think, unless there are any other questions. Oh, more.
Oh yeah, just that there's a lot of comments on good, excellent presentation. Thank you. Let's see, Jolena said the Mobilizing Main Street program has been excellent. So just as a reference. Yep. That's all. I don't have any other questions right now.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my presentation and I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry.
All right, so it is 10:40. We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back at 10:45. We're making up a little time, which is great because our hope is that at the end of the day, we'll have time to show the video that Amanda wanted to show. So see you all back here in 5 minutes.